We're several months now from the season finale of the Ahsoka show, and I've had a lot of time to think about it. Now, I'm not the type of person who thinks that Star Wars is just dead, but I do think that it's in a coma. Let me explain. You see, what happened in Ahsoka was that the last hope that we had that Star Wars was going to be any good for at least the next few years was kind of ruined. Now, the reason why I don't think that Star Wars is just plain dead is because I don't think that most properties are just dead. I mean, even something that I really dislike, like Marvel, could easily come back if there's just the right approach to it, and Star Wars is no different. But the right approach is something that Disney is obviously not interested in, or at least not focused on. They still have this idea of success the same way that they had with Marvel for the 10 years of their golden age. The business model of inundating the market with massive amounts of content, and that simply just doesn't work for most franchises, and it certainly doesn't work for a franchise like Star Wars, and it certainly isn't a long-term plan for any franchise, including Marvel. Star Wars cannot exist by having new shows, new games, and new movies coming out 5 or 6 times a year. It's just not possible. Star Wars is a galaxy epic, and it requires several years in between projects to feel epic. One of the biggest problems that I noticed this year was just how much everything coming out diluted the grandness of the overall story. Star Wars fatigue is real, whether people want to agree with it or not, and I think we saw that this year. I think that we've been seeing it for the last several years. It's real because I don't care how many good shows or games come out, we will eventually get tired of it. I also think that there's a really good argument to be made that it's not possible to make that much good content over and over again despite the effort. Quality cannot remain a constant if the product's quantity continues to increase. But back to my point. Before the Ahsoka show came out, I said that Star Wars better not ruin the last good thing that there is to ruin for me, or I'd be out. I made the comment and I was dead serious about it. But by the end of the Ahsoka show, I didn't feel that they had actually ruined Star Wars any more than it already was. My number one complaint about the show was that Sabine becoming a Jedi just didn't make sense in either the lore or in her own story in general, but I didn't think that it tanked the entire franchise. But to be honest, the more time that I've thought about it, and the more time that I've put towards considering the entire canon of Star Wars right now, I no longer agree with that statement. They have ruined it. Now, Star Wars isn't so ruined that it can't be fixed, as I said before, but right now, as it stands, it is ruined. There is no future for Star Wars with its current path and Disney's current idea of what success is. Ahsoka was supposed to be the flagship of which all these other shows and movies were going to follow, and it just isn't good at all. The Mandalorian is ruined. The Bad Batch is probably going to be ruined since it has to lead into the Ahsoka timeline eventually, and Ahsoka itself is just not a good show. We genuinely don't have anything left to look forward to. Even if Andor Season 2 is pretty good, it still doesn't really matter because two things about that show are completely true. The first is that the show is barely Star Wars, and it really is only Star Wars because of the veneer of Star Wars aesthetics that they put in the show. And the second is that we already know how the story ends, and no matter how good it may be, they're probably only going to be able to squeeze out 1 or 2 more seasons from this show, which the ending is already completely foretold. It will not have any great impact or any major story revelations for Star Wars in general. And sure, the Jedi Survivor games are okay, but in reality, they're not really getting any better. The last one that we just got really wasn't that good, and the story also had a whole lot of problems in it that kind of hurt the lore of Star Wars in general, and I'm just not okay with that either. The truth is that we're in a bad place right now with Star Wars, and it's definitely not something that's getting any better. Even the larger channels that specifically talk about Star Wars are having to go and find old material to talk about and are openly admitting that Star Wars just isn't any good right now, or at least that it's not in a good place. I know that we've said it before many times, but the truth is that Star Wars really needs new leadership. I also think that this last show kind of proved that maybe Dave Filoni is not the guy for the job, despite how much I've really loved the stories all the way up until Ahsoka. I think this kind of hopeful dream that we all had about Star Wars eventually being run by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau is just not something that's realistic anymore. I mean, even if Filoni and Favreau do get Kathleen Kennedy's job, the current shows that they are creating, they're kind of trash. Star Wars needs a complete overhaul. It isn't just about the woke crap that they've been putting in it anymore, and it isn't just about the fact that every single hero has to be a female now, and it isn't just about the fact that the sequel trilogy is so bad that it's not even watchable and makes no sense to the overall canon. but the entire direction. The idea behind the success for what Disney believes the Star Wars franchise needs in order to be successful has to change. Star Wars needs to take a break for a while. If Disney is so hell-bent on having Star Wars be a TV series now instead of being a series of movies, then that's fine, but they need to be dropping it down to one show. No matter how exciting a multiverse or multiple timelines or several different stories across the great universe sounds, it simply isn't possible to get people to be that excited for that long. It's also not possible for those shows and all those different timelines to maintain a level of quality that's expected in a universe like Star Wars. One show or one series of movies, and that's it. Look, there's a reason why when George Lucas owned the franchise that there was only one show that actually made it into the canon, and that there's only 6 movies, or 7 if you want to count the Clone Wars movie, that are a part of the official canon. What Disney is doing, down to its foundation, does not work for a franchise like Star Wars. I don't think it works for any franchise for that matter. Crap like female heroes, crap like a not-so-secret woke agenda, and crap like 5 to 6 shows or movies or video games a year just doesn't work with something like Star Wars. And look, people can keep blaming this person or that person or this person, but the truth is that the fault lies with 2 people, Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy. And since Bob Iger is obviously not going to be going anywhere for the next couple of years, it's got to be Kathleen Kennedy that's got to go. I mean, what are you even doing at this point? How many more failures need to happen before you cut off the head of the snake? How many more times does the fandom need to be completely destroyed before you realize what the problem is? Honestly, it sucks to say it, but Star Wars probably needs to take 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 years off to regroup and come up with a story, one story that everyone can get behind, a true hero's journey. And like I said before, it's not like Star Wars is dead. There's no such thing as a franchise being completely dead. But until Disney realizes what's going on, Star Wars is going to remain in its coma, and fans will continue to complain and yell and hate what they're doing to our beloved franchise. It's sad to admit it because Star Wars is my favorite piece of entertainment that has ever existed, and all they've done is ruin it for the years to come. There used to be a time when people would pay a price for these kinds of mistakes, and until Disney learns this, we are going to continue to have to suffer these awful movies and shows. Look, I know that this is a little bit of a downer, and that's really all I've got for you today, but I really thought that it was important for us to discuss the state of Star Wars right now. Ahsoka really was a bad show, and as time has passed, I really have realized just how bad it truly is. You know what they say, as time passes, you only remember the good. And I don't think that it's a really good sign, considering that the more time passes, there's not a single good thing about that show that I'm remembering. I'm the Germexican, and I hope that I've earned your subscription today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.